Could you imagine having to stop your life and change it entirely just so you could raise another life? This is the reality for many young girls here in Guatemala. Teen pregnancies in Guatemala hold dozens of causes, but if thoroughly analyzed, the two main causes are the lack of sex education, especially in the public education system, and the lack of funding that the public healthcare system has. Sex education, also known as sex ed, is a type of education that every teenager should learn. However, it's unfortunate to know that in Guatemala, sex ed is incredibly lacking. According to the United States Agency for International Development, also known as USAID, Guatemala invests around 2.8% of the gross domestic product in education, which is significantly less than the regional average, which is 4.8%. This means that a lack of funding combined with a lack of efficiency has set limits to students' learning outcomes. Essentially, this leads to barely any sex ed. In 2015, a study conducted by Facultad Latinoamericana de Ciencias Sociales Guatemala, also known as Flaxo Guatemala and Gottmacher Institute, where researchers surveyed students between the ages of 14 to 17 in areas such as Guatemala City, Huehuetenango, and Chiquimula, asking them about their experience in sex ed. It's shocking to see that of all the students they surveyed, only 7% said that they received sex ed. Let's look into a different perspective. When it comes to teaching sex ed, it's important to include at least these 5 important lessons: anatomy and physiology, prevention of STDs, use of contraception, values in interpersonal skills, and gender and sexual reproductive rights. However, 72% of the students surveyed said that they received anatomy and physiology, 31% about the use of contraception, and 16% about values in interpersonal skills. Notice how none of the students surveyed said that they received about the prevention of STDs, or how about gender and sexual reproductive rights. It's clear to see from this data the flaws that the curriculum carries. But on top of that, Flaxo also informed that sex ed was being taught incorrectly or with outdated information. Teachers lack training or resources in order to teach it appropriately. Nevertheless, one can still argue that sex ed is a type of education that is delicate and is best taught through the parents so they could have more control over what their child can learn. Religion, beliefs, morality also may be in both, and while those arguments are valid, it is equally important to consider that sex ed being taught by professionals enriches students' judgment and behavior, simultaneously reduces risks such as contracting STDs, teen pregnancies, etc. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, also known as UNESCO, argues that sex ed has the most impact when the parents, teachers, the school, and adolescent-centric services are also involved. Providing sex ed at school doesn't necessarily imply that parents shouldn't talk about it with their children at home. If anything, the children can learn the facts at school, which then gives the opportunity for the parents to talk about their personal beliefs, morality, and behavioral expectations. I'm curious, how many of you have heard of comprehensive sex education, also known as CSE? For those of you who don't know, many international organizations such as World Health Organization, WHO, and UNESCO openly advocate about the importance of CSE. Although there might be some people that argue that CSE is taught at young ages and might pollute a kid's mind and raise their curiosity on the topics that are covered. UNESCO argues that CSE doesn't necessarily talk about the topics that sex ed covers, such as anatomy, puberty, STDs, sexual health. CSE can also talk about personal feelings, bullying, and recognizing other people's feelings. It's important to keep in mind that what is taught at young ages is very different from what is taught during adolescence and puberty. To give you an idea, CSE aims to provide more understanding of human sexuality and gender, while also addressing a range of issues that are relevant to young people's lives, such as understanding consent and understanding that when a person says no, it means no. I would like to tell a personal story. When I was around the age of 11 or 12 years old, my cousin who was 16 got pregnant. A lot was going on in my family, some family members completely closed communication with my aunt. During family meetings, I could hear some family members speak behind her back saying hurtful words such as, "How inconsiderate is she?" or seriously, "How ungrateful can she be?" Never did I hear a family member offer help or feel empathy for her. As months went by, the situation kept getting worse and my aunt could barely afford proper health care. And so my grandmother had to come in to help her financially. Access to public health care is a huge problem in Guatemala, considering that more than 6 million of Guatemalans cannot access to it. There's a million reasons as to why this is, but one of them being how expensive it is. This presents a significant concern for pregnant women, as it is imperative to seek for professional help at some point during the pregnancy. However, according to the U.S. Agency for International Development, also known as Health Policy Plus, the Guatemalan government only invests around $97 per person in the public healthcare system. This compared to the United States, which is $7,825. This is seen in the hospitals, as they don't come with the facilities to treat someone facing a complex situation. The infrastructures are poor, there's barely any equipment, and the hospitals are either overworked with barely any staff or understaffed and still full. According to WHO and UNICEF, in 2020 there were 6,160 physicians, and 80% of them worked in Guatemala City. This means that there are 0.36 doctors per 1,000 inhabitants. This compared to the standard worldwide, which is 1.50 per 1,000 inhabitants. Having a difference of 0.14 is incredibly alarming. Furthermore, let's talk about the people who live in rural areas and therefore speak indigenous languages. Guatemala manages 25 languages, one of them being Spanish and the rest being indigenous languages. According to the Organization of the American States, 40% of the Guatemalan population speak an indigenous language. So this presents another issue in hand: language barriers. This is seen in 2019 when Ministerio de Salud came out with the data that 6 out of 10 maternal deaths are that of indigenous women between the ages of 15 to 20. This is because of the issues mentioned before: limited healthcare, language barriers causing delayed treatment, the large distances that people have to travel, and having barely any money to afford transportation. So I want us all to take a moment to reflect on the importance that sex ed and the public healthcare system has in our lives. Teen pregnancies are not just statistics. They represent young women filled with hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Providing comprehensive sex education nurtures healthy relationships, respect, consent, and supports teenagers on their journey to discover more about their bodies. It breaks the cycle and the stigma there is around sex ed and gives students a safe space to talk about topics they wouldn't normally feel comfortable talking about. Our public healthcare is an essential element in guaranteeing that every young woman, regardless of socioeconomic status, has access to high-quality reproductive healthcare services. Together, we have the power to break the cycle and to normalize teen pregnancies in our culture. Let's make comprehensive sex education a reality for the Guatemalan public education system. Let us advocate for a better public healthcare system that anyone can access to, and let us educate others on this issue for the well-being of our future generations. Thank you.